everybody. Welcome to the Geex Book Club with Bonnie Burton. Hi, Bonnie.
The end. No, I'm
Bonnie.
kidding. I'm a little out of it. I took a nap right before this, so I would be more energetic. And I forgot. You know how sometimes when you take a nap in the middle of the day and you wake up, you
And you're
feel
groggier?
well, yeah, you feel like you're groggier. You feel like more time has lapsed than it should have. You feel like
Uh-huh.
you woke up in a different era.
I mean, 100% because that's why I don't like naps. Like they
Yeah,
say you're not supposed to nap more than 30 minutes, but it literally takes 30 minutes for me to get to sleep in the
me
first place.
too.
So I'm just like, well, what what's the solution here? Just don't nap?
Well, the
I don't
funny
know.
thing is, I am such a light sleeper, and I live in a pretty noisy apartment complex full of like 20 somethings doing their 20 something thing. So it's like
Oh.
there's not a lot of quiet. So I mean, I'm
Mhm.
used to it, but if I want to sleep during the day, I have to do this whole situation. So what so what I do is I on YouTube, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are like 10-hour loops of just
Oh yeah.
rain sounds.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the best. It's the best thing to go to sleep to, when I'm in a hotel, because I have, like, I have a really loud sound machine that I have on in the background when
Oh.
I'm sleeping in my home, but I don't have that other places. So I do have a white noise app, but sometimes you just need some rain, and that beautiful
I need
YouTube loop.
yeah, I need the rain and thunder. Like, I need it to be more
Yeah.
realistic. Sound machines don't work for me because they sound a little too artificial white noise. So I will
Yeah.
say, I used to go to sleep when I lived in San Francisco, where there's rain all the time anyway. I used to
Mhm.
go to sleep listening to a 10-hour loop of the Star Trek Enterprise core warp drive.
Oh, that's very repetitive and soothing. Yeah, I can see that happening.
It's almost like a heartbeat sound. So, like anybody
Mhm.
out there listening that babysits for babies or young kids or has one, I highly recommend it because it's kind of like a soothing. It's
Boom,
the heartbeat of the
boom,
Enterprise. It's a
boom,
heartbeat of Star Trek.
boom, boom,
Uh, that's how
boom.
you basically make geeks. Anyway.
Yeah, if you would like to listen, this is Bonnie's not scientific or medical
Oh yeah,
advice. If you would like to make a geek, do it to that song.
exactly. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a anything like that. But I will say
Hey,
that
little river. Hey, little river, you were conceived to the warp core. What,
yeah.
mom?
What? What's that? What's a warp core? What's that mean? Yeah, it's like it's just and also on there's Deckard's apartment sounds from Blade
Mhm,
Runner, the original Blade Runner. There's a 10-hour loop of that, which is also very soothing. But I
mhm.
find that rain and thunder for some reason really gets me. So, but I have to have it up loud. So I play it really
Gotcha.
loud. And then I have my like eye mask thing that you put over your eyes so you don't when you like if you
Oh,
open
yeah.
your eyes, you don't have like glaring light thrown in.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
you're talking to someone after I had my baby, I became a superhero in that I could hear the cat walking
oh yeah.
across the house very quietly. So, I mean, I just she would startle me awake to the point where I was constant that's why I had to get on Lexapro. I just recently got off of it, and it's been an adjustment because I had to get higher weight earplugs because my senses were acute. And
Yeah.
so I had to plug my ears up, and I also have a pillow, and I have a very loud, noise machine going on at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do like full no, it's almost like one of those deprivation tanks
I've never
that
done that. Have you done it? I want to
yeah,
do
but
it.
I will tell you though, if you're claustrophobic, it's not fun.
Oh.
I know that I did it on a whim. I think I did it with one of my friends. We had like a Groupon thing or whatever, and we
Mhm.
went. It was someplace in San Francisco, and the ones that we were in were kind of like the ones they show in The Simpsons when Lisa and Homer go when they're bonding as
I haven't watched The Simpsons in 25
yeah,
years.
so it's like one of those things. So anyway, it was interesting, but you also are acutely aware you're sort of inside a coffin lightly full of water.
That
Uh,
doesn't sound appealing to me because I don't like water, and I mean, I like water as in warm bath water, but, like, swimming is not appealing to me. It's just not my thing,
yeah.
not my
Well,
jam.
also it's like no sound. You're in complete darkness. It's
Mhm.
weird. It's weird, but it's supposed to and heighten all your other senses and help with meditation and all that stuff. So it's very, very interesting. So anyway, yeah, so I was doing this full sound thing, and then I was like, do my neighbors think I'm like a witch that has like rain and thunder just in her apartment? Like, I'm wondering if they like walk by and they're like,
It's the most appropriate thing to say, considering that the book that we're reading this
I
month
know.
is All the
That's
Birds in the
why I
Sky about a witch. That's
that's
so
why I wanted to say
incredible.
that. That's why I was trying to do a transition.
Oh, look at you. I guess
I
if we
know.
had coordinated at an advance, it would have been super, super
Trying
deft.
to surprise you with my ability to transition from a very long TED talk about trying to get to sleep in the middle of the day to our actual topic of
Which is the book of the month that you
yeah,
picked, which is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. Let me read just a little intro paragraph, a summary about it, and then you can go into why you picked it, okay?
let's do it.
So the book is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders, an incredible author. She is also one of the founders of IO9, if you're familiar with that. Her partner, I guess her partner her partner in making that website is Annalie Newlitz. I'm
Yep.
going to, yeah. And she is also an incredible author who wrote a great book on the history of some cities, ancient cities, which was really interesting. Anyway, so here's a description of the book that we read. Childhood friends Patricia, Delphine, a witch, and Lawrence Armstead, a mad scientist, parted ways under mysterious circumstances during middle school. But as adults, they both wind up in a near future San Francisco where Lawrence is an engineering genius and Patricia works with a small band of other magicians to secretly repair the world's ever-growing ailments. But something is determined to bring them back together to either save the world or end it. That's it.
Yep.
That's the
That's it.
description. Now, why did you pick this book, Bonnie?
Well, I picked this book. So she has other books. So if you like this writing style or if you want to explore some of her other stuff, I think she just released a new book as a sequel to one of her others. She is, okay, so here's the thing. I think that some of the best writers are fans of the type of fiction they write. And she is a big fantasy and sci-fi fan on IO9, which was a Gawker site. So it was like, like part of the whole Gawker family of blogs. They would just cover basically entertainment, so books, comics, video games, movies, TV shows that had to do with sci-fi and fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And Annalene was the editor, and then when Annalene left, Charlie Jane became editor. And I would see her at press junkets when I worked at Lucasfilm. She would come to all of our press junkets and our
I know. I
screenings.
have to tell you one of the most awful points in my whole life, and I will tell you this, and this is not to shame Charlie Jane at all, but
Uh-oh.
I was going down the red carpet at the EW party at Comic-Con, which is like the most elite fancy
Oh, yeah, that's the
party.
one everyone would kill to get into aside from, well, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one that's always on the top of the Hard Rock Cafe.
Yes, and it's very hard
Hotel.
to get into, and people
Yep.
even, like, rent hotel rooms just so they can watch the
Well, no,
stars come down the red
I've been a
carpet.
few times. I've been a few times by accident because the person that was the editor of EW at the time was my old boss at Lucasfilm. So
Oh.
so I got into those parties, but when you're a civilian going to a celebrity party, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I went every year. It was always kind of a mad dash to get there. I would go to sleep at 7 to wake up at 9 to go to this party because it was so hardcore. It was super fun. Like, I knew a lot of people. I'm not that impressed with other actors. They are prettier than most people, but, like, it's fine. But I would never remember, like, going down the press line, and I didn't really have much to talk about, and I was talking to Charlie Jane, and she literally was like, "The Game of Thrones cast are here," and just totally, like, pushed me aside because she had to get to the Game of Thrones cast to interview them for IO9. Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, it was not it was just a funny situation where like,
And I
"Oh,
think
okay.
I remember that year because I was there at that party,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Peter Dinklage was
Yes!"
did not want to be at that party. Like he was
No.
very disgruntled, sitting on a stool, like a stool in the corner. And I was smart enough to know to heavily tip one of the bartender slash waiters. I think I gave him like, well, I think it was a heavy tip. Probably wasn't, considered he was surrounded by
Like
celebrities.
$10, that's a big one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm thinking I'm Anna Delvey with her hundreds or something, and I probably gave like a $50 bill saying this is yours if you make sure that I just always have a drink in my hand. and I
Mhm.
planted myself on the sofa that was by one of the many little mini fire pits. And and then as soon as I sat down, George R. Martin sat down next to me,
Oh my
and
gosh.
we were but the funny thing, all during that Comic-Con, we kept finding sitting next to each other at every party. So, like, at the Bill Prady party
Yeah.
that he always throws, I was sitting next to that's when you met him, I think,
A
JJ
lot of good yes, and I was so
George R. R. Martin.
starstruck, but
Oh
he
my
had
god,
been like,
you're
"Oh, yes, I'm
thrilled.
familiar with the guild," and I was like, "What?"
Oh, yeah, no, he's another person who is a great writer, but he loves the franchise that he's in. Like, he reads
Yeah.
other books, like, I always
He's a
and
fan. Yeah,
he's a
he's a
fan.
fan. He's a fan of sci-fi. He has an organic love for sci-fi and fantasy just like Charlie Jane does, and that
Yeah,
you could tell that in the
you
writing.
can tell in the writing if it's someone that really cares about that. But anyway, I digress, but I will say that party's crazy because I do remember, sitting next to George R. R. Martin. It was funny because everyone thought I was with him for a while, and I'm like, "No, no, no, we're just scared of mingling, like, we don't want." like, but
It's amazing.
he was, like, holding court, so, like, people would come
Yeah.
to him. So I didn't have to like, I got to see Seth Green because Seth Green came up and said hi to me and then saw George R. R. I was like, "Oh my god." And, like, people came up to George R. R., and then there were people I knew that I could just say hi
I just
to.
like to call him RR.
R. I know, I have to
I'm
be
just
careful
kidding.
'cause I'm not, like, besties with them, but we took a great photo together, which looks like we're at prom together, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, that's sweet. Was it
Yeah.
like did he hold you from behind?
No, but it was like a
Not
hug
that
where
one. Okay.
it was like a hug where it looked like we were really close when we had literally just met.
Aw.
He gave me a coin, that was like a specific coin that he gives to fans he really likes. It's a Game of Thrones type coin,
What?
and
I didn't get a coin?
yeah, it was because I wrote a very angry letter to the editor to the New York Times when the Game of Thrones first came out. There was the stupidest review of Game of Thrones was written in
Uh,
Times about how now women can get into fantasy because there's sex in it.
ew, ew, what?
And I was like,
Ew,
"What?"
ew.
And so I wrote this long thing going, "Hey, we've been into fantasy since fantasy started. Here's all the proof. And by the way, you need to read his books if you really, like you clearly know nothing about fantasy that you would say that." And it was
Yeah.
this scathingly long letter to the editor that they printed the whole thing. And I guess his assistant clipped it out for him and he really loved it and remembered it. So I was like, the power of writing a letter to the editor can really go a long way.
Listen, you gotta keep that coin, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but anyway, why don't we start talking about this?
Well, we're talking about why you picked the book, but it's
Oh,
okay. This is a all my listen,
Charlie
every
Jane.
podcast needs to be just a tangent podcast.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
should
yeah.
just call the feed tangents.
You and I are the queens of tangents, so I
Yeah.
mean, this is not a shocker to anyone that's
Nope.
listened to us before. But
Nope.
I will say that Charlie Jane, because I'm also I work both sides of the coin. So like I was an entertainment journalist and movie reviewer and TV reviewer for most of my adult life, but then I ended up working in the studio system, on the marketing side, but also creation side, and also I
Mhm.
write fiction as well as review it. So I'm like all over the place in this, but I constantly would run into Charlie Jane, and then Charlie Jane and I would run into each other at the same cafes in San Francisco that we like to write in. So
Mhm.
like I loved Wicked Grounds, which is like a great place to go in San Francisco. It's very inclusive and a lot of people play board games there and role playing games
Sounds
and stuff.
amazing.
That's where we celebrated Tabletop Day every year, in San Francisco, but I think we did a Vaginal Fantasy Romance Book Club meetup there.
Yes, you did. You did a meetup there. Oh,
Yeah, so
those were
Brian
the days.
go
Bonnie,
ahead.
did you know the 10-year anniversary of Geek and Sundry is pretty like right now, where I mean,
I
when we're
read
recording this. Yeah.
I read your beautiful essay about that.
Oh, thank you.
That was very sweet. Yeah, no, I to me, Vaginal Fantasy Romance Book Club, it lived on Geek and Sundry in the beginning, but then we moved it over to your YouTube channel, and to me,
Mhm.
it's less Geek and Sundry, it's more us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
it was for sure, just us. You know,
we
it's kinda hard to figure I mean, I am not a person to be pegged down and have a consistent brand, except for it's just something I'm enjoying, and
it's whatever
so, yeah, that was a good run we had.
but also, we were the precursor. We predated BookTube. We
Yep.
predated Book Talk and Bookstagram. We were the instigators of that.
I know, Bonnie, if we
Where's
just
our
focused on
money?
one thing and did it better and just
Where's
more
our money?
consistently.
Where's our
Yeah,
crowns? Where's our accolades? Like we did
it's
that. We
okay.
Google used to use us in presentations of how to use Google Hangout because we were the
Only
first
one who was
people,
doing anything with it. It's
first
okay.
people to use Google
You know
Hangout in a way that was creative in that sense. And Google Hangout predates Zoom, so it was like
mhm.
we were so cool. I mean, we're so
It's
cool.
okay. We know that we're cool, we don't need anybody else to tell us.
Exactly. We're like the Fonz. You don't. He knows he's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
if you
so so you picked this
yeah
book because you love Charlie Jane. She's a
yeah.
real geek. She's a real fan of the work. And so had you read this book before, or is this something
Oh,
that you were just new to?
oh my god. So I read it when it first came out, loved it, and then just sort of in fact, I don't know if I think I wanted to pick it for our first book club, Veg Fan, but it wasn't
Mhm.
sexy. There's no you know what I mean? There's no like hot steamy Bridgerton action. And
No, there's a slight there's a little bit of suggestive romance in here, but it's very subtle and it's not
yeah.
the focus of the book.
Well, it's one of those urban fantasy books that I think is kind of what urban fantasy began as,
Mhm.
which is not, "Hey, I fell in love with a werewolf." But
Yeah.
because that I feel like urban fantasy kind of made a shift at some point into more romance and less sci-fi melding with fantasy, uh hero's journey, blah blah blah, and turn more into sexy times with a whole bunch of orcs. You know what I mean? Which is not there's nothing wrong with that. I love both sides of urban fantasy, but this felt a little more on the innocent side
Yeah.
and
No,
less
for
on the
sure.
side. And I just liked I like anything where a story mashes or compete magic competes with technology. You know what
And
I
that
mean?
is exactly well, that's what's wonderful about this book is that we have one of the leads, Patricia, who is a witch, and
Yep.
I love the introduction to her character. The first episode, the first chapter is all about her being able to speak to birds and a tree, and it sets up the whole book in such a beautiful way. And then we have this other kid, Lawrence, who is a total sci-fi nerd, and really the arc of the book is them falling in love, but
Yep.
also them being at odds. Their talents being at odds with each other, which is such a it's very simple, but the way that she writes it is so complicated and it has so many layers and I just love it. What were your favorite parts about the book?
Well, I think the beginning when when she's talking to animals and a bird leads her to a tree that
Mhm.
tells her she's a witch. I mean, I'm I'm just gonna say right there, that's always been my fantasy life where
Yes.
I was a farm kid and I lived in a very rural part of Kansas. And I would often, because we weren't allowed to stay inside, I think here's the thing with parents from the 70s.
Wait, you weren't allowed to stay inside?
They don't want you inside because me and my brother would create a ruckus. We were too close in age, so we were always like wrestling and fighting and bickering. And I think it drove my mom crazy. So she's like,
Yeah.
"You could go outside, get some fresh air, go outside." And I was a bookworm, so I don't want to go outside. Like if I was sent to my room as punishment, I would be happy. So they had to figure out other punishments for me as a kid, like yeah, like, they would take books away from me, that would be punishment, right? Like, not
Yeah.
go to your room because 'cause I'd be like, "Great, this is where I wanted to be in the first place." So, they always said, "Go out, get some fresh air." Because my brother was, like, a tom like, I mean, he wasn't a tomboy, he was a boy, he was like a Mr. Athlete kid that's always playing baseball and
Yeah, he was
sports.
a jock, he was a jock.
Yeah. I was not. I was a klutz who liked to read. So that's not a good background for athletes or any kind of sport activity. So I
Mhm.
would grab all my books. From a very young age, I was reading. So I was reading like golden book biographies of like Louisa May Alcott or like a Little Women or Little House on the Prairie. Lots of littles. Little House on the Prairie or my Holly Hobby books or whatever. And I
Yeah.
would climb a tree with them. Like I'd put them in my backpack and then climb a tree, like go walk as far as I could, but I could still see the house because we had a
Mhm.
lot of farmland around us, so we didn't have any neighbors. And I would, well, we had some neighbors, but not any pesky, nosy neighbors. And I would climb up a tree and then start reading. And then once it would start to get dark, the rule was once it's dark, you have to come home. I mean, this is before. now that I'm into true crime and stuff, I'm like, holy, how was I not kidnapped like every day of my life because
I
I was
mean, I don't know. I feel like it would be wonderful
seriously,
to be able to like in Europe, kids take the subway all the time. They're just like
yeah.
very much more comfortable with being autonomous and also comfortable not being with the threat of kidnap and threats all around. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel like
We
we
hitchhiked as kids. We hitchhiked on farm roads all the time, so it's
okay,
like,
that's dangerous. That feels
well, yeah, but everybody knew each other, so it's like there was I don't know. It was just I feel like I was easy pickings for serial killers, and I don't know why they didn't come for me, but I digress.
well,
So
thank goodness for that.
thank goodness. So anyway, I would hang out in trees a lot and I would
Okay.
read my books out loud a lot. And I thought I was doing a big service to squirrels and birds by reading to them. Like I thought I was Snow
Oh
White.
my God, it's so cute though.
Yeah, so like a squirrel and I would always bring like peanuts or cashews or something in my pocket. So as I
Mhm.
was reading, I would feed squirrels. So I was like convinced that it was my first book club, but it just didn't have humans in it. It was like
I
a
love
book
it.
with me and some
I
squirrels.
hope I hope there's some squirrels listening right now. They're loyal fans of yours from
I was
a young
thinking
age.
there's one squirrel that was really into Stephen King when I started reading that as a young age, and there was another
That's
squirrel,
disturbing.
Wrinkle of Time, there was another oh, no, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. That was one of another squirrel's really favorite
That
because I
would
used
creep me
to
out in that I would think that the squirrel was definitely sentient. Like
well,
that one feels like, "Oh, this squirrel is a person or something."
I think the thing is I would do animal noises for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but also I think they were playing me for the nuts. You know what I mean? Like I think they were like, if I look really extra cute at this girl, like I'm listening, she'll give me more peanuts. Like I think that's what it
Oh,
was. But anyway, I was really enamored with that idea that I was, talking to nature as it were. So this idea of this character in this book, Patricia being a young girl, that a tree tells her she's a witch, that would have been my dream. And I always wanted to talk to animals where they talked back or I understood them. Like a Dr. Doolittle situation, but
yeah.
like more like I could understand
Like an
all
one of the kid in Encanto.
yeah, like I just thought that was such a sweet thing that she put in this book. So that's attracted to me to that character right away. But then
Mhm.
Lawrence's character I really liked. And I mean, it's kind of cool because this book starts out with them being naive young characters that are in junior high, which is
Well,
always
there's a couple of sections to the book, and, like, the first section is wonderful in its I mean, it is a very quirky book. Like, I would say the
yeah.
tonality of the book is very Wes Anderson. I
Mhm.
would say that if somebody's gonna adapt it, it would have to be somebody
Oh
very
my
twee.
god, yes. That would be such
Yes.
a great Wes Anderson movie that I'm gonna tell Charlie Jean this because I feel like if she's ever in talks to make this a movie, girl,
She should have heard that before. I mean, it's
I'm
just
sure
so
she knows it.
obvious.
Yeah,
Quirky, and it's also a little Amelie, it's very adorable,
it is.
and that's what I loved about it. Also, I could see some people being irritated by it in that it is very twee, but I loved every single bit of it because you actually don't read a lot of books. You see a lot of cinema and you don't read a lot of books in this style, like a twee
Huh.
style, and that's what I love. I loved it. It was so charming. I fell in love with and then that made the bullying that they went through as kids
Mm.
that much more impactful. Like the emotional impact of that was I mean, I was genuinely upset at the neglect of the parents and the fact that the parents didn't understand these two kids at all. Both sets of parents are borderline abusive to me,
Yeah.
emotionally abusive for sure. And then she has a sister who's physically abusive to her, which made me so angry that the parents weren't doing something about it, Patricia's parents. And then Lawrence's parents were so didn't understand him. It was just there's so much emotion in this book, which I felt, was so impactful. What did you feel about that first section?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention the bullying, but also I was gonna mention the parent thing because it resonated so strongly with me. Because I, for the longest time, was waiting for the talk. I was waiting for the adoption talk. Like, I was convinced that because I have nothing in common with my parents. I mean, my dad was like he's like a cowboy, but he was always like he was good at every sport. He was class president. He came from a very rural, small background where everyone knew each other, but he was always Mr. Popular. I joined 4-H to make him happy because he wanted me to be
Oh,
involved in community stuff. Which, by the way, that was the best decision I had ever made because that's where I learned Dungeons and Dragons. Because farm kids know how to play Dungeons and Dragons better than anyone because they're
Mhm.
like, you know what I
Very
mean?
isolated. Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a lot of downtime and they don't have a lot to do, but also they're very imaginative and they also understand about creatures because there are creatures. It's a whole thing. So but my parent, but and my mom was sort of like, my mom's kind of like in her own world and she's a bit of a hippie, but she's also very, I don't want to get into it too much, but
Yeah, don't go into mom
you and
trauma.
I
That's fine.
definitely had some issues with parents, but I had a mom that was very kind of centered on her own stuff. She loved
Mhm.
us, but she wasn't really into what I was into. Like she didn't understand what I was. My parents are not sci-fi or fantasy fans.
So you
They
felt misunderstood as a kid, and so you
Well, also,
understood
I felt
where Lawrence was coming
misunderstood.
from.
I felt misunderstood by other kids too, because
Yeah.
I was the Luna Lovegood of my world. Like I was
Mhm.
definitely a weirdo. I didn't know I was a weirdo. I thought it was normal, but then other kids like play with Barbies and do normal things. I was not that kid. Like I had imaginary friends and talked to squirrels. I mean, that doesn't make you kid of the schoolyard. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, but it's so upsetting when I just don't know. I mean, I guess if you watch Stranger Things or like,
I wish I had
the
powers. Though if I had
yeah,
powers
yeah,
as
it's
an
just it's
adolescent,
the bullying of people who
I
are
would have
different. It's
committed
so
I would have
impactful.
committed mass murder at recess though if I had powers
If
like
you
that.
had yeah, don't do that. I'm glad that you didn't have those powers.
I mean not
S
mass murder, but let's just say when you're bullied as a kid and you aren't I was a klutz and I knew no self-defense. If I had any self-defense school or any defense self-defense skills, I wish I had. I think they should teach that I think as parents, you need to teach kids how to deal with bullying, which is so funny because later on, I wrote a book called Girls Against Girls, which is all
Oh.
about how to deal with bullying, and it's written for preteens. And sadly, my book's doing really well, but because it gets picked for National Anti-Bullying Month every October or whatever by Barnes and Noble and other places, but and it's way out of date because I have a cyber stalking section from 2009, which is
No,
like
you should do an update of it,
I should do an
Bonnie.
update. But I mean, I was bullied as a kid pretty severely, and thank God. You probably think this too because you're a little bit younger than me, but we didn't have the internet as a bullying tool like they do now.
Oh,
So thank
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I was homeschooled, so I just wasn't exposed to being bullied, but I certainly was misunderstood, and my kid is definitely a little bit of an oddball. She likes to play by herself. She, you know, she's her own person, and so for me, like, seeing any scenario where any kid is getting bullied, I'm like, "I wanna why is an adult not there right that second?" You know, I'm so
Well,
upset. I
I
just
will
get so
tell
upset.
you, adults tend to do this, and I'm not a parent because if I was a parent, I'd be out there like pushing kids off my kid, like I'd throw my kid in
Yes!
trouble.
That's why
But
she goes to
like,
jujitsu.
yeah, but I will say that. Oh, she does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good. Oh, okay, cool. Good parenting there, Felicia.
She's not
That's
gonna
good.
ever she's gonna be able to take people down. That is never she will that's my goal. I don't want her to be able to get somebody off her that she doesn't want on her. That's, like, my goal.
Can I tell you something funny that parallels this book really well? When I was little and I started going to public school, and I was getting bullied. I got a book out of the public library about witchcraft, thinking I could hex them. Thinking
Oh,
like,
no!
yeah, so instead of thinking, "Oh, maybe I should learn some aikido or some karate or something that I can at least like protect myself and use gravity to my advantage or something," like that. No, no, I was like, "No, I'm gonna hex." So I got this book. It was like I don't even know what it was. It wasn't like, so you want to learn witchcraft. It wasn't like that. Because I mean, now you can find books on witchcraft that are geared towards every demographic. But
Of
this was
course, but back in the day, you had to really
I
search the crumbs for
mean,
good
this
witch
yeah.
hexing.
I was using Latin spells that probably were just gibberish, and I'm sure I was mispronouncing things. I'm surprised I didn't like summon a demon by accident, but I was like I was like throwing hex bags at kids and just like being really trying to look evil. Like I can't remember what Stephen King book, or maybe it was a book that was like it wasn't I can't remember what was a book that would have come out in the late 70s, early 80s about kids that had maybe it was Witch Mountain. I think it was Witch Mountain. Remember those kids that could do telekinesis?
Oh, I remember that Disney movie. It was
Yeah.
terrifying to me. I
So
don't
I
know
thought,
why I was so terrified. I watched it much later on the Disney Channel or
yeah,
something, but
so
I was so creeped out by that movie. I don't know
I love
why.
Escape. Oh, it's so good. Escape from Witch Mountain's so great. So I would be like, "Oh, you think you could bully me?" And I would pretend to move things with my brain and try to like convince them I moved a pencil or something. And sometimes it worked because I think I was just really good actress. But other times they would just like want to beat me up more. So I don't know if it really, I don't know if
Yeah.
that helped me at all. But I will say when I read this book, I was like, yeah, bullying is like something all kids have to deal with when they're around other kids. That's just sadly how kids are. But you would
Is
think
it
parents
is it
would
though?
really learn.
Is that how kids have to be? Because that depresses me.
It depends on what psychology you believe in. Like I do believe Lord of the Flies, or even Yellow Jackets. If you watch the great series Yellow
I
TV
gotta
series,
watch that.
oh, it's so good. But like you just know that when kids are left, or The Troop, which is a great book, everyone should read that. When kids are left to their own devices, bad stuff goes down when there's a lot of kids. I wouldn't say if there's just two kids, it's not like The Bad Seed or something, but or The Bad Son, with Macaulay Culkin, which is also a great movie. You should check that out.
Mhm.
But it's definitely, if there's no parental supervision, and this is a trope. There are so many horror movies and books and comics about what happens when kids are left to their own devices without adults.
But wasn't there like a true life story about a bunch of kids who did get stranded and that didn't happen at all? They actually helped each other?
I don't
Like,
believe it.
wasn't okay. All right. You're cynical. I'm gonna try to be positive
If
just
it did
because
happen, no, you're right. If it did happen, yay, and I think that would be awesome. I just know from my own personal experience being left alone with kids my age, with no adults, even all the way up to teenage years.
not good.
No, bad things happen, and also,
That makes me so depressed. Wait, okay, so we gotta move on from that because it's
oh, but I
making me
do
too
want to say
depressed.
one more thing.
Yeah.
Parents of that time of where I grew up, they did not intervene a lot with kid on kid bullying because they thought we should work it out ourselves. Because they thought we would grow character, we would grow
Yeah,
leadership
but
skills.
where do you get see, this is my thing. If you gave
Yeah,
kids the tools, like, how do you deal with this situation? There was any education. It's the same thing with parenting. If there was any education, then people would know what questions to ask, what kind of phrases, how to approach a problem. If you don't have conflict resolution skills or social tools to be able to deal with that, you're I don't think anybody's instinct is to deal with it immediately spot on. You know what I'm saying? Well, although
yeah,
I will
I
tell you a
agree.
story about my daughter, which I'm really proud of.
Oh,
Last year, she was in jujitsu class, and there was a new little kid who was kind of scared, and there were a bunch of kids running around before the class started, and they kept running after this kid, but the kid obviously did not want to be run after. And at a certain point, she threw herself between the big kids and the little kid and said, "Stop!
wow.
Chase after me instead." And I was like, I literally started weeping because I
Oh,
was like, "Oh
like
my god."
she's like Wonder Woman. Yeah, like I mean, I shouldn't say that all kids. I mean, it's not that all kids are bad because I never bullied anyone. I was always standing up for the underdog myself, but I
Mm,
was usually the underdog. So I was.
yeah.
It's hard to stand up for other kids when you are the main kid that's the target. So I, first of all, your daughter's awesome. I don't think there's a question there. I think I want
Oh,
to
thank
be.
you.
By the way, if your daughter ever starts a band, I'm totally in. Like, I want to be.
She's definitely I'm making her take piano, although I forget every day to make her practice, so I gotta just put it in my calendar.
Yeah,
Um,
I had to do that. But yeah, I will say that not all kids are horrible, but this book did really bring out
if
some.
the book makes me angry at other children, and well, what most importantly, the parents, because
Yeah, I
they
agree.
were so not supportive of these children. So basically, the first part of the book is them becoming friends and then
Yeah,
getting torn apart in a terrible way. They go their separate ways.
yeah.
Um, the Patricia gets
Can we talk
taken
about Lawrence?
away.
Can we talk
She
about
gets
Lawrence real quick?
huh?
Do you want to talk about Lawrence real quick as a kid or no?
I mean, we can, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying. Well, I just want to make sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah. So Patricia gets taken away by some witches
Oh yeah,
because her magic is manifest, and she just gets kidnapped. And I guess at 13 years old or something, she's gone, which is pretty deep
yeah. That's
stuff. I can imagine. And then Lawrence gets to go to the tech school, the
yeah,
math school,
yeah,
and so they're separated until they're adults, which is like that's the first part of the book.
yeah.
And
It's like
what do you want to say about Lawrence? Because he's a really cool character too.
Yeah, it's like she gets she gets taken away to the fame school, but it's of witches. Like she gets to go to the cool art school.
It reminded me of the Magicians a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's not Hogwarts though. I do want
No, not at all.
so any of you that are thinking about reading this, but are like, I don't want another Hogwarts ripoff. It's not that.
No, and you don't get any of the time when they're in school, actually. They're in school as little kids, and then they get taken off to their respective specialty schools and separated, and then we meet them when they're adults, having graduated from college and they're in their careers. They're, like, in their late 20s at least, I think. I don't even actually know how old they are.
That's the only grievance I had with this book because I
What?
loved the beginning so much that I was like, I want to see them in high school. Like I want to
I
see.
know. I kinda wanted to see them in school figuring their stuff out, but, I guess they took them she took them away so they could grow as people and
Yeah.
become specialists in what they do, so they could come back together
Yeah.
to basically save the world.
So
So
Lawrence.
yeah.
So he's interested in science and inventing. He loves AI. He makes a 2-second time machine.
He makes a 2-second times machine so he can kind of avoid bullies, actually. It's pretty
Here's the
brilliant.
thing, I would have loved that, and, you know
Yeah.
what? Some people think that, you need a lot more time to make a difference in a time machine. I would argue 2 seconds is enough time. You don't want too much time because you don't wanna have you don't wanna have the trope of, "Oh, I don't wanna go back to a certain thing." Like, you don't wanna do the butterfly effect where you do something that ruins all of the future for humanity because you stepped on something by accident. You don't wanna do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like 2 seconds
2
is enough.
seconds could get you a lot of money at the roulette wheel, and that's all you really need, you know? You get a little
Here's the funny thing. There's a Nick Cage movie about that. So there's a Nick Cage movie. I mean, there's a Nick Cage movie about
about
everything.
everything, like, he's the most prolific
Oh,
film he
I
is
love
in everything.
I love him, but I love Nick Cage's sci-fi movies the best. Anything that's sci-fi and horror because he's just the perfect actor for that. But there is a movie where he has premonition. It's not Wicker Man. It's another movie where it's in modern times and the Wicker Man is in modern times. But this is the movie that he has premonition, I think 2 minutes ahead. So it's not a time machine situation. He just
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen in 2 minutes, but he avoids getting shot. Yeah, it's called Next. It's with Jessica Biel. The movie's called Next. I highly recommend it. I'm sure it's streaming. I'm sure it's on Netflix or something. But he
We're
can see.
very lucky to have our chat with
Oh,
us as we do this
I
Geeks
know.
on the Geeks Events channel on my Discord because
Oh,
they fill in the blanks of a lot of things that we just have no idea what we're doing, and we don't
can
have
I
the
just
time to look up.
hire them to follow me around all day long? So when I say, it's that movie that blah blah blah, and they
Yep.
just say it right away, so I don't look like an idiot. Yeah. So it's called Next, but it just felt like that with Lawrence. Like I was like, okay, he gets it. Like it's 2 minute time machine or 2 second time machine. You can't do too much damage, but if you're going to be. I mean, he doesn't get shot at in the book, but I was like. He avoids bullies that way, but like if you got shot at, you would know to duck at a certain time. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
And get out of
perfect.
the way of a car. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But it is a precursor to the fact that he's an inventor. He loves science and also he loves artificial intelligence, which will come into
Mhm.
play later as an adult. But I mean, I was friends with kids like this who were like Dexter laboratory level, wanting to be inventors, wanting to make easy inventions, but their inventions were always kind of like great in concept, not in execution, because they're kids. So it's not
Yeah.
like they have, access to plutonium or something. But I mean, like, I was friends with inventor kids I loved hanging out with them because I always learned stuff. They were always the ones that had the chemistry kits that are outlawed now. Like, I don't even think they have. Do they even have chemistry kits for kids, or is it all like MythBuster
They
kits?
do. No, 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 for sure. Because I bought a couple that were way too advanced for Calliope, and I'm sitting here opening, very strange chemicals, and I'm like, "Maybe you shouldn't be near these as a 3-year-old." So, yeah,
Yeah. Like,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm all for STEM, but I'm not for accidentally blowing the house up. You know what I mean? Like, there's a fine line between anarchist cookbook and STEM.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, so Lawrence is like a nerd, and so this
yeah,
this is all really established. So when we fast forward to the second and the third part of the book, so the second part of the book is them in San Francisco doing their
yep.
San Francisco thing, and this is such a specific San Francisco book. I don't know. Did you ever read Dr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore, which is definitely
Yes.
another 20? That's definitely a sci-fi, a San
Oh,
Francisco
I
book.
love
I
that.
love it so much,
I do too.
and
We should read
yeah,
that
it's
for
a
the group
great book.
sometime. Yeah, we should read that for the group sometime because that's one of my favorites. I'm a
Yeah,
big
it's a
fan.
great one. I don't know why, and it was such a quick read. I don't know,
It
I remember
was.
not liking the ending of it, but I liked everything else about it, so I kinda cut it some slack.
I
But
mean, I lived in San Francisco. I moved there from, where was I moving from? Denver or something, in '96, and I moved away from San Francisco in 2018 to LA. So, San Francisco, I mean, I know it's like it's so cliche to say I left my heart in San Francisco, but I kinda did, like, that San Francisco is built a little like Brooklyn, but it's in California, but it rains all the time, so it might as well be Seattle. But it's got this energy to it, and it's changed a lot. I will say since the tech industry and the internet and the tech bros.
it had well, the same thing with Austin. It used to be super hippie, super
Yeah,
liberal, and kinda, like, loosey-goosey, very very kinda
yeah,
grunge chic, and now it's, like, all
exactly.
slick and rich.
I mean, but also as you get older, things don't stay the same and you have to be okay with that. Like you have to
Yeah, of
be
course.
flexible as an adult. But the San Francisco I love was like full of drag queens and artists and musicians and writers and weirdos. It was like where all the like Austin, right? It's where all the weirdos from the state went, where they could go somewhere without being judged. And it's misfits and weirdos and creators and entertainers. That's San Francisco that I loved. And it's not now it's a little more money driven, tech driven, app driven, but there's still the heart there. Like I still have artist friends that have managed to have rent control and not be pushed out because of high rents. But I was
Yeah.
reading a book and I was like, Charlie did a really good job of showing that other end of San Francisco, which is like the tech entrepreneurs, like the not necessarily the Theranos level,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
uh, which is another level of the app
That's
world.
another level of all that.
A whole
Well,
other.
but you could see that in the book, Charlie Jane put a lot of that tech,
Oh
um,
yeah,
stuff into the Lawrence story, which is basically
startup.
he's working for this billionaire,
Yep.
who's basically trying to make, uh, uh, I mean, it's a little vague as to exactly what they're trying to do, or maybe I
I think
just
there
glossed
is
over it.
next, though. This is what I thought it was, and I could be wrong as well because I kind of glossed over it too. But
There's
I
something about it that was less interesting, way less interesting than Patricia and her friend of witches in
I know.
Sa like, I all I cared about was that, and
Well, I
then
think
Lawrence's,
it was a tech startup
st
into wormholes. I think I remember.
yeah, it was a startup in the wormholes, they were trying to break through a dimension, like, gobbledygook gobble it was very much like, put gobbledygook in here, for me, at least. And so
Yeah,
Patricia, like, goes and saves somebody with her magic because they opened a wormhole, and then a girl went through it, and she had to, like, save her. And basically, this machine that Lawrence is making is, going to destroy the world. So, it
oh,
was a gravity problem, that's right. Thank you, kitty
that's it.
cats.
And also, it was. I think Deeg was saying in the comments, is trying to build a portal to another planet so humans could survive.
So the homies survived all the horrible things that were happening on the planet. Yeah, and then the witches, on the other hand, had a sort of a plan that if it got so bad on Earth because of the environmental problems and all that stuff, they were going to basically wipe out all of humanity. So
Yeah,
both sides have this extreme solution to what the problems that are facing humanity at the time, and they all have these little iPad things that in the end, we find out was this sentient AI that Lawrence created when they were in middle school that was very good friends with Patricia, who put some magic in it. And so that becomes not a Deus ex machina, but it does become the vehicle with which the world is saved
yeah.
through. And I had to tell you that I will say that there are the bigger I did read the book. I've read the book twice. The same thing happened to me on this one. I just glazed over a lot with some of the
It happens.
explaining what's going on
It
in
happens.
because I'm so driven and so drawn in by the characters.
Yeah. Which I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing because if you're so
No.
into the characters, the book has done its job. I mean, you're doing your job as a writer to have the reader super invested in certain characters and maybe isn't there for all the explanation. I think that's a problem with sci-fi and fantasy sometimes, at least for me as a reader, is if they have to explain a lot or if there's a lot of juxtaposition or if there's a lot of this is how this mechanism works or whatever.
It's
I
not
have
nobody really
really
cares about it, and
yeah,
I think that this kind of, some people might point this out as a flaw in the book, but I find it to be a strength because really it's about the characters, about,
Yeah.
What the unraveling was the witch's plan to kind of unravel the world, and like these weird demon monster creatures were going to take over. It was both both of these people, the extreme witches and the extreme science people, had not great ideas. And they kept telling, I didn't actually understand this. They kept putting Patricia down for her self-aggrandizement, thinking that she was more
I know,
important than
that
she
was like
is.
that was weird to me. It's like, they were really being into humbleness, which is, I guess, a thing you need to, if you have power or if you have access to magic, you can't be a narcissist, right? Because
But
then
then Lawrence kind of is like, "No, forget that." And in the end, Patricia did save the world, right? With the tree and
yeah,
the AI going in the tree, a peregrine.
yeah. I mean, it works in the end. It's just, it took a lot to get there, and also I just said it was fascinating that you have these two extremely different groups who have a plan to save humanity, but it's the worst plans ever.
Mhm.
I mean, if you wanna get rid of problems of humans, get rid of humans, I guess, is a way to.
I mean,
I mean,
honestly, that's it. I'm convinced that the Earth is trying everything it can, but we're just too
oh,
good
yeah.
at solving problems.
Oh, yeah. No, Mother Earth will get rid of us at some point, and it'll be like, well, we can't say we didn't see that coming because she's been giving us hints all, like, there's
I mean,
been a lot of
we're
good.
gonna do it to ourselves. I think we're the ones who are gonna do it to ourselves, and it's gonna be something environmental because we just can't seem to manage what we've been given, and that's what it is. I mean, it's what it is.
We
So
also
anyway,
have
yeah.
0 survival skills. I think we found that out during COVID. Ah,
Oh
real
yeah.
of,
I
like,
mean,
people, "I'll just grow my own food," and they're like, they don't even know how to garden. It's like,
yeah.
well.
We have a great comment in the chat here. Boss Hogger says the book has a romance between the world's most advanced AI and the world's most magical ancient tree. What more do you want?
I mean, that is a
It's
good way
true.
to put it. That's a
And there
great
are some
way to sum it up.
amazing, like I have a couple quotes that I picked from the book
Yeah,
because I just
sure.
love it. Society is the choice between freedom on someone else's terms and slavery on yours, which I love that quote.
Ooh, that's good.
I
That's good.
love it. I love it. And I loved there was just a lot of, like, funny things where I'd laugh out loud. I was like, "Oh, of course hipsters become Mata girls in this alternate world after this d" so to kinda walk you through it, Patricia and Lawrence get back together. He's building this thing. She and the witches attack, destroy his machine. People are died. Lawrence is traumatized. They get back together. There's this huge chaos. There's flooding. There's environmental disasters happening everywhere, and they in the end come back together with Lawrence having lost his voice because he saves Patricia's life. He had basically learned all about magic, but he had to swear he would not say anything about magic to anybody. But he has to sort of beg someone not to kill Patricia, and in doing so, he has to tell the woman about magic, and therefore we leave the book. The world has been saved by Patricia and Lawrence and the AI and the tree, but Lawrence will never speak again, and there's
Yeah,
nothing they can do about it, which is like really bittersweet and wonderful.
I agree. I agree. And I will say too, this book does a good job of showing sometimes the greatest damage is done with the best of intentions. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's like, you want to save the world, or you want to do this, or you want to do your best, but you end up making more damage happen because you're not looking at the big picture, or you're just not looking at all the angles. And it's such a good book on so many levels, but it really, I don't know, I'm glad it ended the way it ended, but it was very sad. I think it was sad for Lawrence. I don't know. But can we
I was
talk about.
sad for Lawrence. Also, I didn't understand the red. Is a tree red? I
Oh,
don't it bothered me in that I'm like, "This what is this question?" I got a little frustrated at that
like
question because
RED,
it's
like the color
so
red?
basically, Patricia is asked in the very beginning of the book as a kid, is a tree red?" And this question sort of haunts her
Yeah.
throughout her life, and at the end, when she's faced with, like, "Are you gonna save the world? Are you gonna have the magic tree save the world or not?" The birds in the tree ask her again, "Is a tree red?" And she ends up answering, "I don't know," and that's the answer, which
Yeah.
is a little, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a little over my head. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was like, am I too stupid to figure this out? Like, there are times when I read books like this where I'm like,
I was
is this
like, did I miss
wrong?"
something? Did I miss
Yeah,
something profound here?"
oh
Or
no,
because
I did a word search. I was in the same boat when I first read this book. I did a word search because you can do that on Kindle, looking up the word red over and over.
Oh, you
saying like,
did
"What
because you were like, "Oh, looking in to see if there was a clue?"
yeah, like, I was like, "Did I miss something? Was there, like did one of the witches say something I forgot? Like, what did the bird say something I forgot?" So I tried the same thing you did. I was like, "What's with the red thing?" And I still don't understand. I feel like,
Okay,
oh,
good. I felt like, Felicia, you just don't read careful enough anymore. You've got some kind of attention problem. But
I'm
I literally I read the ending twice and I was just like, "What? I'm
yeah.
not really sure what's going on." But maybe it goes in with the self-aggrandizement. They didn't want her to aggrandize herself and her we do have a good boss hogger again, is like, her admitting "I don't know" might be the key to her arc, and that's why the witches were like, "Don't aggrandize yourself. Don't be the hero. Don't."
Yeah,
That was
like,
kind of where she made a mistake
yeah.
all the time.
Or, like, just because you know magic doesn't mean you have all the answers,
Yeah,
um, that kinda thing. Like, I think it was very one of those Mr. Miyagi moments where I'm like, "Wait,
yeah.
is this supposed to mean something bigger and I don't as the reader, I'm not smart enough to pick up on it, or is that it? That you're just not supposed to pick up on it?" And I feel like someone asked Charlie Jane that same question at, like, one of the interviews. She did a great talk at Google. If you search her name on YouTube and do, like, Charlie Jane Anders interviews or even look up the name of this book and interview, she did a Google talk about this interview, which was very interesting. Google has a great by the way, whether you like tech or not, Google has a great books program on YouTube where they interview authors, and they interview a lot
Mhm.
of debut authors as well. And that was if you want to get really into the nitty gritty of this book and why Charlie wrote it and why some of the influences and stuff and why she was interested in the way the story folds out. I highly recommend reading interviews with her because you have to remember she's also a journalist at heart, so she knows how to give good interview. So she's
Uh-huh.
a very dynamic person to listen to when she talks about her books. But I was right there with you. I was kind of like, did I miss something? And I kind of feel like that was the point. Like it was supposed to be a vague
Okay, good. It wasn't just me. All right.
thing. Yeah.
Maybe I'm sure I'm 100% sure that Charlie Jane, if you listen, she has a podcast actually was
Oh yeah.
called All Our Opinions Are Correct, and I actually
This is
do
Annalise.
enjoy listening to her and
Yeah.
Annalise podcast because they do deep dives into themes in sci-fi and fantasy that are really fun. It's just two really smart people talking about things I love, and I really do enjoy it, and I guarantee you that Charlie Jane can tell us a really complicated, wonderful, layered reason for some of it. I should probably read it again, but, we have to move on to another book next month.
And you could also just ask her on Twitter. I might just ask her on Twitter to be honest, because I haven't talked to her in forever. So I feel like, hey,
Yeah, but then
you
you're
might be
spoiling her book. She can't she's not gonna publicly spoil her book.
She's
You
not.
could DM
She's not.
her. Yeah.
She's not. She might DM.
Well,
Maybe I'll DM. I'll slip in her DMs. Wait, that sounds something sexual. I will just contact her without an audience and see what she says. But I
exactly.
feel like she said something in one of the interviews. So if I find it, I'll just post it in a on this chat in the Geek
Yeah.
Events chat in
Okay,
case
great.
anyone wants to do some more. But can we? I just before we move on to the end of this. Can
Yeah.
I say I loved the aimless order of assassins and wished that there was more about them in this
Oh
book?
my gosh, me too. When they first see him in the mall, they have an assassin that's after them because I guess there's a prediction that one of them will end the world or it's something like that. Anyway, so the whole assassin thing, they have this assassin who's like stalking them, but then he pretends to be a guidance counselor in their school, and it's so
Oh, good.
funny and quirky but amazing. It's kind of like when you watch John Wick. The only thing I cared about John Wick was the assassin and the hotel thing, which was
Yeah.
I'm still obsessed with.
But also, is that not perfect to have an assassin be a guidance counselor?
It's perfect.
I mean, if I had thought of my guidance counselors in junior high as secret assassins, I would have listened to what they had to say. But
100%.
but I didn't because I was like, how can I listen to someone giving me career advice when you have the worst career?
Mhm.
Like that's
It's
I
true.
can't take advice. Like if you were a magician or a famous actor or like a roller derby star, then I would listen to your advice. But you're literally have a job that no one wants telling me how to get the job I want, but you couldn't figure it out for yourself. I don't believe you. But if it was an assassin, I would be all ears. I'd be like, yeah, tell me more how I can get into University of Boulder, Colorado. Like tell me more how I should take more science classes. Like that's the
Love
thing.
it.
in retrospect, if I had been a little bit more creative and talked myself into like, hey, maybe I should pay attention in math class because I could build really cool ciphers.
Oh,
Or
no.
or maybe if I paid attention more in chemistry class. I mean, I don't want to use Breaking
Don't do
Bad.
it. Don't never look back. Never look back.
Anyway, I just
Okay,
wanted to
well,
bring
we
them up.
love the
Even
book.
I wanted them to have their own book. So if anyone talks to Charlie J and say, "Hey, can we get an aimless
Can we
order
have the
of,"
spin-off of the Aimless
I mean,
Assassins? Yeah,
come
it's
on,
fantastic.
come on.
Um, well, I love the book. Thank you, Bonnie, for picking it. I've picked the next book because I think it was suggested in the Geeks Book Club. We have a Discord channel where everyone can hang out and discuss the books and suggest new books for the club. And I'm picking one that literally has been on my to read list for about 4 months. So I'm going to read it because I actually have it. It is Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao. It has been a good read. It was a Goodreads. It's won a lot of awards. Best of last year. And here's a description. The books of Huaxia dream of pairing up with the girls to pilot chrysalises, giant transforming robots that can battle the mecha aliens that lurk beyond the Great Wall. It doesn't matter that the girls often died from the mental strain. And when 18-year-old Zaytan offers herself up as a concubine pilot, it's to assassinate the ace male pilot responsible for her sister's death. But she gets her vengeance in a way nobody expected. She kills him through the psychic link between pilots and emerges from the cockpit unscathed. She is labeled an Iron Widow, a much feared and much silenced kind of female pilot who could sacrifice boys to power up chrysalises instead. So anyway, she gets paired up with Li Shimin, the strongest,
Uh-huh.
most controversial male pilot, and I am excited for this. It smells like a little bit of romance, but a lot of mechs. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, I'm all for the mechs. Like you had me at mech. So
Yep.
yeah.
So if you'd like to learn more about the Geeks Book Club, please go to discord.gg/Felicia Day. There is a Geeks info channel where you can read all about how you could join the club. It involves purchasing some of my social tokens on rally.io/creators/geeks. It's a very low price to entry, and you get weekly hangouts that are some that we share with the world, like felicitations and the book club here, and some of them I do behind the Geeks Coiner, which is I read tarot cards of the people in chat, and I also do a chat with my brother that can never be released because there's too much profanity. All right, Bonnie, any last words?
The tarot card reading. You've been holding out on me.
Oh yeah, we do a Creativity Tuesdays, the second Tuesday of the month, and I read tarot or Lenormand cards to anybody who's in chat, and we have had some accurate polls.
All right.
Come on
Well,
over.
I used to, just so you know, I when I was in the midst of being bullied as a kid, I used to do palm reading, and of people that would bully me, but I would be so on point that they would be scared of me, and I wouldn't be as bullied because they thought
Oh,
I had some sort of. Basically, it's a long con with palm reading. You just tell them a little bit what they want to hear and a little bit of their insecurities.
of
And
course. But I like for me, no one. I'm just here. Like I'm just reading cards. It's
tarot's
fun.
fun.
We laugh.
There's some. I feel like tarot is a bit more interesting, but also there's tarot has a long history. So I love. I
I
mean, that's
know.
not that palmistry doesn't, but I do love a tarot. Like I
I feel
have.
like no. Well, tarot cards are from the 1490s or something like that. They were invented in Italy, but people say that perhaps the Romani had them before that, but they
Yeah,
can only trace the origin to Italy in like 1400s. But palm reading, I bet it goes way back
no,
before that. But
It's palm reading and phrenology, where you would.
oh, read the bumps on your head. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. That's a good way to
Uh,
too. If you want to meet someone that's like But I will
a
say
good
tarot.
pickup line at a bar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you should do on your next speed dating. Anyone listening that does speed dating, offer to do for knowledge, like do the whole speed like head bump reading, and I guarantee you'll get a date.
Okay. All right, you guys. Well, we'll see you next week on the Geeks Chat or next month on the Geeks Book Club. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yay,
Bye,
bye.
everybody.